and welcome to tonight's call with Congressman Rich McCormick. During tonight's call, we will be taking questions from constituents like you. To ask a question, please press *3 now. You may also sign up for our newsletter by pressing *6 at any time during tonight's call. Again, please press *3 now to ask a question and *6 to subscribe to our newsletter. With that, I turn it over to Congressman Rich McCormick.
First of all, I want to thank you for your patience and getting online with us. That means you care. I want to make this worthwhile. I know we've done live town halls in the past. We had to turn away about 300 people last time, and it was very distracting because people were also trying to be disruptive. So I hope this will be a very good information flow, especially during times where a lot of you have questions. Online, we already have hundreds of questions. We have thousands of you also listening right now, so I'll try to make use of this as best as possible. While more people are signing on, I just want to throw out just kind of a background so you understand who I am and what my intentions are here. Most of you understand this is my second term in Congress. Before that, I was a Marine Corps pilot for about 16 years, served some Army time, also transferring, and then into the Navy as an ER doctor, and then worked in private practice right there in Georgia, both at Gwinnett, Northside Gwinnett and Northside Duluth, until I went into politics. And when I went into politics, I'd never been to a political meeting in my lifetime, never went to a fundraiser, didn't know a politician. So this was all new to me, but I'm very much a student of the game, very much consider this my PhD course. As you guys know, I have my MBA, my MD, and the biggest spending items in American government are the military and social programs such as Social Security and, of course, healthcare. Healthcare being the single biggest spending item for Americans, which is now a $5.7 trillion spending item in America. About a little less than half of that is spent by the American government through Medicaid, Medicare, and Obamacare. We need to do better. Obviously, the Democrats are making this about that fight right now, and I don't want to make this a partisan issue. I want to have a good talk about what we're going to do moving forward. We will not solve that through a shutdown. I promise you that. Everything that right now is being done through a clean CR is exactly that. The clean CR, which we voted to pass in the House and that is hung up in the Senate, is to fund things at the level that was passed by the Democrats previously. Matter of fact, the funding level that we're at currently was meant to expire when you talk about the subsidies for Medicaid by the Democrats. This is a Democrat bill. The funding amount could not have been extended or inflated to the $1.5 trillion they're asking for right now with their own majority in the House, the Senate, and the presidency at the time. So it seems to me, and you guys may have a different opinion, some of you anyways, but it seems to me, I don't know how you would get $1.5 trillion more in spending that you couldn't pass when you were in the majority, when you're in the minority. And plus, it's fiscally irresponsible. Right now, we're nearing $40 trillion of debt, which we're paying over $1 trillion in deficit interest payments right now. And so it's very important that we do better, that we have more efficient healthcare system. And quite frankly, we want to talk about Medicare and Medicaid. We can actually discuss that in the budgetary process. That's all we have to do is fund the clean CR, and we'll get back to funding a better healthcare system, which I made a priority. Quite frankly, since the Affordable Care Act was instituted in 2010, the average American pays almost 90% more for your premiums. On top of that, your copays and your deductibles have gone up. And on top of that, insurance companies now are making 230% more in profits. If you think this is about doctors' pay, they've actually decreased their pay by about 30% when adjusted for inflation. It used to be about 24% of all doctors work for hospital systems before the Affordable Care Act. Now it's nearing 80%, which makes it much more expensive. This is all by design for a government that keeps on getting more and more involved and doing more and more to hurt and destroy the good things about our healthcare system, which quite frankly is really good at what we do when it comes to strokes, heart attacks, and stuff like that. It's just way too expensive. Realize that 4 of the top 10 Fortune 500 companies in America are either insurance companies or pharmaceutical companies. 7 of the top 20. This is a big part of the problem in the lobbying system when you mix in the PBMs, the amount of profits that's going to them. And when we increase the spending, that is basically stuffing the pockets of those lobbyists and those businesses. It's not reducing your premiums permanently because you're paying taxes on that. The average American family right now spends about $32,000 per family of 4 on healthcare, and that's not including your taxes. So we need to do better. Like I said, it's a $5.7 trillion industry by itself in America, and that by itself would be the third largest economy in the world. We have a problem, and that's something I want to address. And I want to make sure you guys understand, too, you guys are welcome to reach out to our constituent services anytime. I take pride in being one of the best in America. At 435, we are in the top tier, the top quintile in volume and timeliness. We don't ever ask if you're a Republican or a Democrat. We just get the job done. We try to do everything possible to be follow up, to do a great job, to find a way to fix your problem, not just to stand behind a rule and say no. It's extremely important to us. We're also top 12, I believe, out of 435 in legislation passed. And I think the reasonable approach, not talking party line politics, but actually answering things with statistical analysis and seeing what works, is why we've been very effective. We don't call people names. I think you've seen our election results, the best in Georgia, really, when you consider what our PBI is, what our expectations are versus what we actually got. Voter participation, we're top in Georgia by over 4% to the second place, and also voter results, too, based on our constituency. We're the best in Georgia, and hopefully that's a reflection on my amazing staff, our caring attitude, and our common sense approach to politics. With that, I want to open it up to the floor. I know we got a ton of questions out there. I apologize if we don't get to your questions today, but you can always call our office, and we'll do our very best to answer every question we can.
Yes, so tonight our first question will be from Jenny. She is an online streamer right now, and her question is, when will the House reconvene and negotiate the funding bill, and when will Arizona's Congresswoman-elect from this District 7 be sworn in?
So two very good questions. First of all, the first one is almost impossible. I thought it was going to be this week we were going to open up. I thought after the No Kings rally that we would have some people say, okay, now it's time to get back to work. But unfortunately, Schumer has really dug in, and he thinks, once again, he's going to get $1.5 trillion more in spending, in deficit spending, than he has right now while in the minority. Quite frankly, everything that we are funding with a clean CR is what the Democrats voted for during COVID-era spending. Even the reduction in subsidies was voted for by the Democrats. This was a design by them. There's no way they could have passed this. What they're asking for right now, there's no way they could have passed this when they were in the majority. So it's not in good faith to shut down the government and then say, I want something in a minority I couldn't pass when I was in the majority of House, Senate, and the presidency. And if we gave in to that, then what would keep them from doing that every single year? To actually get their way when they're in the minority that they couldn't get when they were in the majority. It doesn't make sense. It's not a good faith argument. We debate this through the budget process, and they have to stick to the constitutional responsibilities to pass a budget. And so I thought it was going to end this week. I'm not so sure now. I think they're doubling down, and this will be on Schumer. I guarantee you, I will not yield on this point. You cannot allow the minority to rule through tyranny. This is not the democratic way. This is not the representative way to do government, and they are manipulating. This is the longest shutdown ever already. I know it's the second longest overall, but it is the longest shutdown based on a clean CR ever. Now, the one we had for 35 days in the previous administration was a partial shutdown. This is a complete shutdown of the government. It's going to affect women and children who are destitute. It's going to affect the military. It's already affecting a bunch of bureaucracies that we need to function as a nation. So we need to quit playing games. Make sure you're reaching out to Senator Ossoff and Warnock, to those people in our states that have the ability to turn the tide on this and actually get the government reopened so we can actually negotiate in the budget process a better healthcare system and everything else the Democrats say they're asking for. But to be honest and to be frank, they would be getting rid of help for rural hospitals if they got their way. They would be subsidizing illegal immigrants and their healthcare system. They would be expanding government spending on healthcare in ways that they could never pass when they're in majority. That is the honest truth. You can research it. I'm happy to stand behind my facts.
Okay, great. Our next caller is Lisa Stevens from Cumming, Georgia. Lisa, you are live with the Congressman.
Yes, Congressman. I was wondering, what would be your plans to stop the lobbyists from dominating all in the House and also in Congress for their agenda versus the American people? It seems like they're setting the laws, making the parameters and everything through their money. Is there any way that you would be able to have a plan to have it more restricted or and less bias on the lobbyist side and more for the people?
Oh man, there are some ways, and the problem is that, quite frankly, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. The leaders of both parties are some of the biggest recipients of those lobbyist dollars. So it's kind of a self-licking ice cream cone. I'm not disparaging them. It's just the way it's always been. That doesn't make it right. Quite frankly, there's two ways that we're controlled. First is when a lobbyist makes loopholes for subsidies for these agencies or for extra regulation that keeps competitive marketing on healthcare or whatever it is. When you make tens of billions of dollars per year, you could basically give $1 million to every single congressman and senator and the White House in addition, and still not even bat an eye because you have that kind of money to spend. Quite frankly, there's two ways to fix it. One is say you can't do that anymore. Lobbyists cannot no longer give money to politicians, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Secondly, you could also say we're going to have a fair tax system that doesn't have a bunch of loopholes and that basically people lobby for and say, I'm going to do a fair tax or I'm going to do a flat tax where everybody pays their fair share, as we say, right? So everybody has skin in the game. You have a flat tax on everybody or a fair tax, depending on, that's a harder one to explain, but basically which adapts for people with below the poverty line. But basically, when you allow loopholes for certain businesses and expenses and stuff like that, you're fulfilling lobbyists' dream, and that's why certain businesses make billions of dollars but pay almost no taxes. That's why hospital systems a lot of times are not paying any taxes and expanding by massive amounts every year and funding every single get together in that area because they don't have to pay taxes. They compete against doctors who do pay taxes and are a lot more expensive. There are so many problems with lobbyists, but we have to do it collectively. You can't just do it for some people and not for everybody. Same thing with term limits and other things that I would love to get done. We have to make sure it's even-handedly applied, but it is an uphill battle. There's a long history and tradition of this stuff. But I'm with you on 100%, and we need to keep on working on the American people to put pressure on the politicians to pass common sense legislation to make that happen.
Once again, please remember to press *3 if you'd like to ask the Congressman a question. Our next caller is Garrick from Alpharetta. Garrick, you are on with the Congressman.
Hi, Congressman. Thanks for having us today. I wanted to talk a little bit. You talked about lobbyists. I want to talk a little bit, ask you about some of our spending and some of our focus on abroad. Most of our constituents have voted for America First and wanted to kind of get an idea of how you thought we might be able to change some of the influence of the lobby, some of the influence of how much we spend abroad to focus on some of the many things that we could be doing here, creating jobs and focusing on some of the programs you mentioned earlier, like healthcare.
Sure, that's a great question. Actually, there's a common misconception on this too. First of all, realize that foreign countries kind of lobby through their ambassadors, if you will, but they can't actually give us money. No foreign country, no foreign investor can contribute to my leadership PAC. Can't fund me in my campaigning. That's all illegal, including with the president. I will say this though: when we say America First, which I'm fully in support of, it's not America only. And I'll give you a perfect example. Recently, we made an investment in Argentina. Argentina is the one country in South America right now that I think is doing it right. Milei is turning that country around from basically a socialist program that's going to drain and create instability. If we believe in the Monroe Doctrine, which has stabilized the Western Hemisphere for many decades, which is now falling apart, where you're seeing China have greater influence than us in Brazil, Venezuela, Peru, Cuba, other places in the Western Hemisphere. That's very, very unsettling. That could cost us not a lot more than an investment in countries to stabilize and make sure they're friendly to us, benefiting us economically. If we have mineral rights and businesses that we're co-investing in, they're investing here, we're investing there, and we have that great relationship and trade, that benefits us in immense ways for our economy, taxation, immigration, in so many ways that keep us from spending money on crime, on inflationary items. We're talking about imports or exports. It's when we invest in other countries that are friendly to us and to our purposes, it actually saves us money. And I would make a case for this with Israel, Taiwan, Venezuela, or Argentina, Ukraine. And I know people really have consternation about spending money in Ukraine, but that is a top 5 country in resources in the world. They have uranium, copper, cobalt, steel, titanium, 70% of Europe's grain. If we don't have control of that, that means Russia does. And who do you think they're going to sell that stuff to? North Korea, Iran, and China. That will cost us trillions of dollars in the future. That will be a burden on our future, and that will be a pressure on NATO that we don't want. So an investment sometimes up front is going to save us a lot of money in the backside. I'm America first 100%. I want to see us thrive in the future. One of my favorite presidential quotes of all time is Calvin Coolidge, who said, "The business of America is business." That was 100 years ago. That guy got it. He was a minimalist when it came to government regulation and taxation and spending. I'm the same way. I don't want to see us spend ourselves into oblivion, but if we don't take leadership in this world, we will be supplanted by China because they are investing all over, and we're losing our influence, and that is going to affect our power.
Our next caller will be Allison from Alpharetta. Allison, you are on the line with the Congressman.
Hi there. Yeah, I just wanted to check and see about the H-1B status. I think they're putting some holds or some extra fees. Just wondered if that's going to continue to go forward, even with renewals, to help the kids that are graduating and those younger kids, youths under 30, find jobs that are just evaporating due to the H-1B1 hires.
Yeah, so it's a complicated. Thank you for that question. And oh, by the way, I want to point out to you guys, I know there'll be several people who, inside and outside my party, will disagree with some things I'm saying. I'm trying to be factual. I'm trying to be objective. If we all agreed with the minister of the church that we're in a cult. We're going to have some differences, but they're going to be honest differences. And I don't say that you're wrong and I'm right. I'm just trying to explain why I think the way I do, and I'm open to future conversations always. When it comes to H-1B visa, let's talk about education in America right now and our advanced education. Right now we have about 1 million foreign students in America, 1 million per year. Of that, about 250,000 of that is from China, another 250,000 from India, and about 500,000 from all the other countries combined. Now, of course, China and India are the 2 most populous countries in the world. Combined, they're approaching 3 billion people. That's pretty impressive numbers. I think India by itself is 1.47 billion people and expanding right now. It's one of the few countries in the world that's expanding at that kind of rate. Most other continents are actually shrinking in population, negative population growth in Europe and actually in the United States if we don't have immigration. Meanwhile, we send most of those kids that come over here for educational experiences go back to their own countries, and a lot of them to compete with us, quite frankly. That's actually, they're taking the place of our students. That's buoying up the education system monetarily, but it's creating a future disruptive power against us where they're using technologies that are leading edge to develop AI against us, for example. I'll give you a perfect example with China. 47% of all AI computer programmers right now are in China, and they have about 50% of all patents for AI, and that's just for starters. That's just them. If you look at what India is doing right now, they put a spaceship on the dark side of the moon for less than $100 million recently. That's impressive. They are going to be major competitors with us, and we're training their future. As far as the H-1Bs coming into America, it's kind of run its side. This is kind of why I don't like affirmative action. The H-1B is kind of like something that was trying to correct a problem that we have in America when we had a lack of computer programmers and a lack of certain talent. And it doesn't have to be just one H-1B visas for computer programming. It could be everything from the hotel industry. It could be construction. It could be healthcare. It could be agriculture. We bring in immigrants from all over the world for different things, for different times of American history, and that will fluctuate in our needs. And right now what we're experiencing is AI is taking the lower level programmers' place. So when you're straight out of college, you're the first ones that are going to feel it. So this H-1B free program that we needed from foreign countries in the past to help us fill that void of people we didn't have enough for, which was definitely abused, by the way, was fulfilling a need, albeit with some flaws. But now it's actually hurting our entry-level people from our colleges. Now, we need more STEM. We need to fix our education system badly. It is a really bad program. When the United States has the resources and the wealth that we have, we should be top of the world in education programs. We should have more STEM students than everybody else combined. but yet we need those foreign students to fill those highly educated specialties in colleges. We need to right-size our education system. We need to right-size our H-1B per year, by the way, for what we need. And it should be at a minimum wage, whether you have to pay a fee or a minimum wage to make it competitive and make sure that we hire Americans first, that you're only hiring from foreign countries once we Americans, qualified Americans, are hired. Then the leftovers get filled by foreign people that we need to make our businesses run. By the way, that should be the same for every industry that I just forementioned. This needs to be done annually, not a set number like we've done historically, which is very lazy, by the way. We should have reporting from businesses to why they couldn't fill their whether it be picking berries or serving in a hotel or drawing blood or doctors, nurses, whatever it is. We have to be smart in the way we approach our needs for America. We are in a declining population. We're going to need people from the military. We're going to need people from all over the place. We need enough people to fill those great jobs, especially when you have an economy expanding by 4% per year or more. We're going to have more jobs. So we have to make sure we do this smart. It's not an easy process, but we can't just have blanket rules to solve these problems. We need to be thoughtful.
Great. So we're going to turn over to a poll for everybody to answer. Do you feel the government should be funded so that TSA and border security agents receive paychecks? Press 1 for yes. Press 2 for no. Again, do you feel the government should be funded so that TSA and border security agents receive paychecks? Press 1 for yes. Press 2 for no. And then if you're enjoying this update, I encourage you to press star 6 on your phone now to get signed up for Congressman McCormick's newsletter. Again, that's star 6 to get on our email update list. With that, I'll turn over to our next caller, Khalid from Alpharetta.
Hi, Congressman.
Khalid, you are on the show.
Yeah. Hi, Congressman. It's nice of you to do these town halls when your other colleagues are quite hesitant to do it. Anyways, my question was, in the polarized world of today, are you taking part in any bipartisan initiatives across the aisle?
Okay, great question. So we do have some bipartisan legislation. I'll tell you one thing I'm really excited about, actually. It's something I don't think is controversial. My Incentivized Savings Act, which would literally redefine how we spend money in government. I don't think it's partisan at all. As a matter of fact, I've reached out to several Democrats, and once we get back to work, I hope to pass it. What this does is, I'm a military guy, and this exists for all bureaucracies, but in the military, 30 years ago, I was very frustrated when, as a logistics officer for my squadron, we get to the end of the fiscal year, and I save 10% of my budget for emergency until last month. And I'm told if I don't spend all that money, not only do I lose it and somebody else spends it, but also I get a smaller budget the next year because obviously I don't need that budget. So they punish me if I don't spend all that money. My act would basically say, you get to the end of the fiscal year, whatever you don't spend, 49% will be rolled over towards the next year. For actually a bigger budget, 49% will go back to debt and deficit, not to the president, not to the speaker, not to higher headquarters. It goes directly back to debt and deficit, which you have a massive problem here in America with. And then 2% goes towards bonuses up to 10% of your salary for a retention bonus, to also show you appreciation for saving us money. It redefines the way we look at government. I think it should be a nonpartisan thing. You get to determine your own destiny. If you don't want to participate, fine. But if you do, you're going to save us all money. And most people have money at the end of the fiscal year. And they spend it on stupid things because they know if they don't, they're going to lose it. And so I just think that we need to reapproach the way we do government. That's why we've been very good at getting bills passed, because we pick on issues that we think we can get passed. I'm not interested in messaging. Yes, I believe we are all messengers, but I want to actually pass things that affect you, the American people, and that's why I think we've been in the top tier of legislation passed. And by the way, I have a whole bunch of bills out there. I don't have enough time for all of them, but you can go to my website and see some of the things we're proposing, watch my videos and see more things. And I'm happy to talk to all of you. I mean, call my office, see what we're actually working on. We have the Rotors Act, which is about expanding health care coverage on in this case, helicopter pilots in the military who get way more radiation and way higher cancer rate. I think that's nonpartisan. We've done all kinds of things. And by the way, we have nine Democrats and 9 Republican co-sponsors of that. 18 Democrats on the Ives Act. I co-lead the Men's Health Caucus, which is a bipartisan thing. I'm in several bipartisan groups that basically look to solve problems and get things done. And that doesn't mean that I'm a a moderate guy. I'm actually quite conservative, but I look at things we can actually get past, and we do try to get that done a lot.
Great. So the results are in from our previous poll. The previous poll was, do you feel that the government should be funded so that TSA and border security agents receive paycheck? 80% say yes, and 20% say no. Our next caller will be Daryl from Flowery Branch.
Hello, Congressman.
Hey, Daryl.
Hey, my question is, why are you supporting the rather bizarre internal use of our troops within the United States for, in my mind, unjustified reasons?
Okay, so we'll talk about that. I understand why people would be concerned when you use federal tropes or even federal government employees to go into cities, especially cities that say, we don't want you. When it came to D.C., obviously that's a different animal because we are literally in charge of the government here. We can override things that the mayor says because that's the way our Constitution designs the control of this city. As a matter of fact, when we passed, it's interesting, Andrew Clyde passed a bill that helped us keep convicts in jail because the local federal folks were releasing people constantly. And the average murderer here in D.C. had been released from jail 7 times. 7 times. In most cities, it's anywhere from 7 to 9 times, where you can see it over and over again. We have story after story after story of people who've been released from jail multiple times doing worse and worse crimes. And it's that broken window theory where if you allow somebody to break windows and you let them off, then the next thing you know, they're robbing people. The next thing you know, they're murdering people. There is a psychology behind it. As a ER physician, I'm telling you, we've actually studied the psychology behind this. When you allow people to be lawless and intimidate, they will only get worse. Now, getting back to your point, I do understand the concerns for it. I have my own concern for it, too. First of all, if anything goes wrong, it could be catastrophic. I don't want Marines coming into conflict with the average civilian who's just trying to live their life in a city. That said, when you have federal buildings and federal employees threatened by local lawlessness, such like in Portland, where you have Antifa folks, or in Dallas, where you have people shooting up ICE agencies, or when you pick your city. If you're having lack of enforced law, then of course the feds are going to step in. Now, I would like to say that a lot of governments are trying to step up their law enforcement, but some just aren't doing it. And actually, it's the populace is reaching out to the federal government saying, "Please help us. We don't feel safe in our own cities." But I do understand. I want to be very compassionate, and I do want to be very focused on how we deploy those troops and why we deploy. I think it should always be in defense of federal agencies, federal buildings. That's my opinion. The president has special powers that I'm sure will be taken to court, and they'll hash out to see if they're legal or not. The president says always, "Hey, look, I'll follow the law. If the way the Constitution's designed, if the Supreme Court says that it's not legal, we won't do it." He said that multiple times. And quite frankly, we saw that with President Biden as well, when he was trying to basically dismiss all debt from student loans, for example, that was defeated in the Supreme Court. Of course, he rebroached it. So presidents will do things that they think are right, and then we have the legal debate, and that will decide the end result. But I think it's just a hard place to be in right now because we see lawlessness and crime and murder in these cities that are horrific. And if the local principalities would step up, there would be no need for that. But I hope it's limited to federal applications that are just and legal. And if not, then I think we'll fix that too. But I understand your concerns, and I share your concerns with overreach.
Great. Our next question will be coming from an online question via our website. The question is, I follow you on social media and would like to hear what actionable steps you are doing to end the shutdown while addressing the rising healthcare costs for Georgians. If the answer is that the time for that is after the shutdown, then what will your plan be? Okay.
So, again, I think we kind of opened up with kind of explaining how we are. This is about a clean CR. Funding government exactly the way it was designed by the Democrats when they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. I can't change that. I literally can't go backwards and change what the Democrats voted for 100% and say, I'm going to give you $1.5 trillion more than you could pass when you're in the majority. That's impossible to do in this shutdown. It's not going to be done. Nobody's going to give in to that. Because if you do, then what would preclude them from doing it the very next year, the same thing, and asking for more? The problem is you're never done asking for more printed money from the federal government. Quite frankly, before the Affordable Care Act and before we started getting really invested in what are supposed to be a state-run program, which is Medicaid, only 1/3 of all government spending was from the federal government. Now it's 2/3. And we're heading towards catastrophic territory where over $1 trillion of interest payments are spent per year out of a $7 trillion industry. Sorry, not industry, but spending from the government. We're in a catastrophic problem. When we get back to the drawing board, I actually think I don't want to be pessimistic, but like we talked about before, we have so many lobbyists up here. We're going to have to take bites around the apple instead of reinventing the healthcare system. Is going to be very hard in the $5.7 trillion industry. $5.7 trillion. Let that set in. That's per year, where the average family is spending 32. The way we've done in the past, if I could have my dream done, and this is what I talked to the speaker about just last week. I literally took the speaker in front of several other of my peers saying, what is the plan? And when you have hundreds of plans, why can't we pick one of the best and go with that? Why can't we make these insurance companies accountable, these PBMs accountable, these pharmaceutical companies accountable? When they can deny 1/3 of all claims and have massive record profits, what is precluding us from fixing this problem? And we have a lot of ideas, but we haven't executed those. And a lot of it's because of the deadlock we have with the Senate. The Senate didn't pass anything last year when they were in charge. They wouldn't pass anything. Now we're having a hard time just passing a CR in the Senate because the Dems are kind of holding us hostage again. That's the problem. That's the frustrating thing about a government and a democracy. It is exceedingly slow. It's meant to be inefficient, so it never become more powerful than the people themselves, but it's really frustrating to people who want change. And I get it. Man, one of the reasons I came up here is to fix healthcare. Realizing it was one of the biggest challenges, the single biggest spending item we have in government, the second biggest spending item we have in all businesses, and the single biggest expense to all Americans, and it's the fastest growing. That is unacceptable. And we have a lot of things to do. But if I could do one thing, I would do anything I can to make it more competitive. In other words, deregulate, allow people to compete. Because right now, the insurance companies, PBMs, pharmaceuticals, and hospital systems are basically a monopoly. And they compete with each other kind of, but not really. They allow themselves a profit of, I think, built in 10% on everything. So the more expensive it is, the more money they make. They don't care about keeping costs down. They just want to make profit. And I'll give you two perfect examples. When LASIK eye surgery originally came out, 40 years ago, it cost roughly what it costs now. If you do inflation, that means it's way less now, way less. Matter of fact, it costs half as much in a lot of places than it did 40 years ago, despite inflation. Why is that? Because it's never been covered by mandatory spending. It's not covered by insurance, and it's not covered by government. So therefore, you pay out of pocket, which means it's competitive. That drives the price down and the quality up. The problem is we use our insurance for everything. And I'll give you an example why it doesn't work. First of all, when you have something that is covered by insurance, let's say your car insurance covered your oil change and everything that goes along with your engine goes out, your blinker goes out. Your car insurance would be unaffordable, just like your healthcare insurance is unaffordable. Healthcare insurance should be only for catastrophic. You should have an HSA that's funded, that you can roll over, that you're invested in. It would be so much cheaper. We have so many great examples out there in the international community, but right now you've been trained to go to a physician, get a prescription for an antibiotic, go to a pharmacy and fill it. Now you pay your copay of $10. Your insurance company is going to pay the pharmaceutical company $80 for that antibiotic, and then they're going to upcharge you 10%, which means it's a 90% expense that they're going to charge you your premium overall when averaged. Now you paid $100 for that antibiotics. You didn't see it that way. You saw it as a $10 copay, but really through your insurance premiums, you paid $100 for the antibiotics. If you would have paid out of pocket, it would have cost about $10 to $14. But you've been trained to use your insurance company because of this corrupt system that we have. And if you don't do it, you're still going to have to pay the premiums because everybody else is doing it. It's cost average. But we've all been punished and trained to do the wrong thing in America. We need to fix this now. Increase competition, allow people to do it the efficient way, train people, educate people so that we're not part of this self-licking ice cream cone.
Great. If you're enjoying this update, I encourage you to press *6 on your phone now to get signed up for Congressman McCormick's newsletter. Again, that's *6 to get on our email update list. With that, I'll turn it over to Joseph from Cumming. Joseph, you are on the line with the Congressman.
Go ahead, Joseph.
In the recent growth AI data center construction in Georgia and we're resulting strain on the electrical grid, how do you view the impact on residential electricity rates in North Georgia, and what role should the federal regulation play to ensure both ratepayers are protected and displaced workers from future, AI?
Okay, you're kind of cutting out a few things. I'll answer as best I can because I don't know if I heard the first part or the last part of that, but basically, this is a question about energy workers, the stability of the energy sector. Georgia's lucky because we're the only state in the union in the last several decades that has actually built nuclear reactors. Nobody else has been doing that. Now, we learned a bunch. It was way over budget, way over time, but the rest of America is going to have to play catch up because right now we have a parabolic shift of requirement for energy. We're scurrying. And by the way, anybody who thinks we're going to use just solar panels to fund the future needs of America doesn't understand that less than 1% of not just our energy grid is produced by solar, but China. And they're the main producers of solar panels worldwide, but less than 1% of their energy needs are provided by solar. You're not going to windmill yourself out there. You're not going to hydro yourself. We're going to need all hands on deck for the future energy needs of America. But we need to make it more efficient and faster and cheaper into the future for nuclear energy. I think that is, you're going to see modular reactors like you have on naval ships. One of the ideas I had that I proposed to the White House recently is take some of these nuclear reactors that are inside of these ships that are being mothballed and retired, hook them up to the grid. Really pull them pierside. You already have a built-in security system. You have one way on, one way off. You can replenish you have tons of trained professionals in the Navy who are nuclear engineers who could actually facilitate that power grid and keep it very safe, very secure. But we have a lot of ideas as far as stabilizing the energy costs in America, which, by the way, drives the entire economy. Cheap energy and affordable care energy is the reason that America has been on top of the world as the leader in the economy. You have to have cheap energy. And by the way, that's just you just getting to work, let alone supplying every business with energy to produce a good, competitive product. So it's got to be, anything from clean coal to LNG to the way we process in our refineries, having multiple options so it's all competitive. I'm not against hydro. I certainly love hydro, especially in America where you have so many rivers and dams. But we need to have all kinds of ideas into the future. We can't just have all of our chips in one bucket.
Our next caller will be Christian from Flowery Branch. Christian, you are on with the Congressman.
Hey, thank you for this chance, and I like everything you're saying. But my question goes regarding to education. Myself, I work in the Gwinnett County Public Schools, and as you mentioned, there is a lot of waste, like about the budget and things like that. Like if you don't spend the money, they take it away. So they end spending the money on stupidities. But my question goes like, what is your solution for that? Is there any way to maybe push more a little bit school choice or something like that, which in my opinion will be the actual solution for that problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, education is the great equalizer in our society. I have a great compassion for education, mainly because, first of all, I was one of those kids that fell way behind in third grade, which is like we were just talking to the YMCA people today on a call with the president of the YMCA of Atlanta and talking about a philanthropic endeavor they do to educate thousands of Georgians who are falling behind, because by the time you get to third grade, you've kind of formed your future already. And so many single-parent households especially are failing. And we have the technology now to actually design AI classrooms. You can customize a teacher who knows your student, knows how they learn, whether it be PBL, problem-based learning, which that's what that means, or didactic, or whatever their learning way is, they can help you maximize your potential. We could expand the STEM program so much. We could get kids interested in science and technologies. There are so many things we could do. Choice is a big part of that, and finding those programs that are actually really cheaper than what we're doing right now. Money spent is not the determining factor on how well kids do. We've seen that time and time again. The evidence is not there. It's how you spend the money and what you spend the money on that determines the outcome of your educational system. Ideally, I would love to see what drives that competition is when you have states and counties and municipalities all in control of their own destiny, where you can see which one works the best. That's a great thing about a democracy or a republic, where you can compare and contrast different styles and see who's working the best. And then you can actually copy that. I was in a squadron in the Marine Corps that was the worst squadron in the group. And I came in, I actually requested to be in that squadron because I figured there's nowhere to go but up. Let's make a reputation. What a bunch of us did, whether you be in operations, logistics, maintenance, we went to different squadrons and said, who has the best program in this? And we copied it. There's nothing wrong with copying the best programs. The next year, we went from worst to first. Let's have people copy the programs that work the best. I think AI is a huge part of our future education system, how we can customize it for kids. Every kid could have basically a tablet, sit in a cubicle, be supervised by some sort of teacher, and you can literally customize the educational system for each kid and still have time for recess. It would be amazing. But quite frankly, let's get to the main point. It should never be run over by the Department of Education, where we take money from the state, siphon a bunch off for tens of thousands of jobs, and then give it back to you with strings attached. To standardize education rather than create that competitive edge, states should be in charge. They will most efficiently be able to design their education programs, and then they get to compare and contrast and approve it with the most efficiency, the least amount of federal, how should I say, just getting in the way of what states could do to actually use those funds in the right way. I just think that the more the federal government gets involved, the worse we do. That's been proven time and time again, especially with education. Educational choice is absolutely a must, and Georgia's behind, by the way. We've made small steps that way. We need to make way bigger steps. I lean on my representative all the time, my state senators and my representatives in my district. I'm constantly bending the ear on this because I believe in education choice.
Great. We're going to switch gears really quick and go into our second poll of the evening. Do you think the Democrats shutting down the government for health insurance subsidies was the right thing for the country? Press yes for 1, press 2 for no. Again, that's, do you think that Democrats shutting down the government for health insurance subsidies was the right thing for the country? Press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. And then we're going to head straight into our next question, which is an online question from John. He would like to know if Congressman McCormick, as a former Marine, to comment on whether it was a wise decision for Marines to fire M777 howitzers over populated areas in California this past weekend, which damaged a CHP car.
So I assume that's a rhetorical question. I am obviously a Marine, and anything that goes wrong is serious. Fracture side, a misfire, whatever. I'm not familiar with, by the way, people who don't know what M777 is, basically it's an artillery round. I'm not familiar with what they did for the ceremony. I'm glad nobody got hurt. Obviously, it was ill-conceived if anything was done wrong. I mean, I can't defend that. But I don't know the details enough to say exactly what happened. Usually when you're doing something ceremonial, it's blanks, so it should have no repercussions. I've been right next to 155 rounds that have been, or your M777s, and for ceremonial purposes, nobody obviously was hurt, and it fired off right next to me. And I've seen 21-gun salutes with those kind of weapons. So I'm not sure exactly so I can't speak to something specifically. When mistakes are made, we review them. We try to correct them for the future. I think it's pretty simple.
Great. Our next caller will be Mary from Cumming, Georgia. Mary, do we have you on the line?
Yes, we do, and it's Mary Helen, actually.
Mary Helen Magruder?
That's it. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. How would you comment on the current military action and buildup in the Caribbean? with the Venezuelan situation and the increase in Marines and naval personnel?
Well, first of all, thank you for that question, but let me caveat this with, you were never going to solve the drug problem by just killing cartel members, because overall, if there is a demand for it, it is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Now, I'm going to think out of the box just for a second. Bear with me, because this is going to be a multi-step. I'll try to do it as fast as possible. But unless you get rid of the demand, and we are literally funding drug lords in multiple countries, in multiple continents, actually. The money that we need to teach our kids first and foremost that when you buy drugs, yeah, you may get high. They don't believe they can die. That's why there's, sometimes up to 100,000 fentanyl overdoses per year. Right now we're around a little over 80,000 per year. I mean, we lose more people in 1 year to drug overdoses than we lost in all of Vietnam. We only lost about 2,462 lives in Afghanistan, which we were in for 20 years. We lose that in more than a month, in less than a month. But if you teach kids that by buying drugs, you're supporting murderers, rapists, child traffickers, human traffickers, people that would overthrow governments and make everybody's life miserable every time you buy drugs, that's what you're doing. It's not cool to do drugs anymore. But we don't teach our kids that. We teach kids about the dangers, but it's kind of like what we did with cigarettes. We used to have a massive cigarette problem when I was in high school. And we tried to teach kids they get emphysema and heart disease and strokes, but they didn't know anybody their age that had that problem. But once you taught kids that these cigarette companies were making massive profits off of making their grandparents sick, it no longer became cool. And by controlling the advertising and everything like that, we got rid of it. Almost nobody smokes anymore. Now, vaping's another story. We got to attack that next. But if we want to, we got to take care of this, the demand first. But I'm very much for taking out drug lords, making them go underground, being hard on criminals. When we ID these drug boats and the sources, it gets very scary for these guys. If you can find them underwater, man, if we're going to find them in the air. We're going to be blowing up planes next, imagine. If I can identify, and we have a very, very good intelligence group that tracks these things from where it comes out to where it goes, and we have, I'm not going to ever give away any secret information, but I'll tell you, we're very good at what we do. We don't destroy questionable targets. We destroy real targets, and it's about time that we play hardball with these guys. But I think it's much more difficult to stop them just by sheer violence. I think we need to get rid of the demand, and that's by teaching our kids before they ever get to the age where they buy drugs that it's an evil thing to do. You're supporting evil people when you buy drugs. If we can teach our kids that, we'll get rid of the demand, and that's even more effective than the violence that those guys deserve.
Our next caller will be from Tom online. He says, if both Republicans and Democrats maintain their stands on the shutdown indefinitely, then what and when do you see the means to return the government to operation for the benefit of the citizens?
Yeah, so it should have already been done. I mean, honestly, we're the longest lockdown ever over a clean CR. Never been done before. Never even close to this. We're second longest overall, but the other one was 35 days, was a partial government shutdown. This is going to affect everybody, but especially the most needy, the women and children who have no means, military people, TSA agents. Now, everybody in the federal government that has a job right now is going to get paid. It's deferred pay, but still, it's going to be very disruptive to people's lives. Even if your creditors are understanding, even if you have to live paycheck to paycheck, this is not a good look. And once again, this has never been done before. This is unprecedented and unnecessary. We are right now proposing and voted and passed in the House a clean CR, which is to continue funding at the agreed upon levels set by the Democrats when they were in charge of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. That is not unreasonable, my friends. That is constitutional, and what we were trying to do is get back to the budgetary process, which is by design how we're supposed to pass bills, not by taking hostage the government. So the sooner the better, Mr. Schumer, the sooner the better, Mr. Ossoff, the sooner the better, Mr. Warnock.
Great. And we have results from our last poll, which was, do you think the Democrats shutting down the government for health insurance subsidies was the right thing for the country? 68% of people on the call said no, and 32% of people on the call said yes. Jumping into our next caller, which is Doug West. Doug, you are live with the Congressman.
We lose Doug?
Nope, sorry.
I'm just going to say right now, it's a good thing I'm not in charge of the computers. I learned to use computers in the Marine Corps. It'd be catastrophic. So my staff's working really hard to make this a seamless experience. So sorry for any delay.
Okay, is this
All
working?
right, Doug, you should be on.
Okay,
Go ahead,
are we
Doug.
working now?
Yep, we're working now. Sorry about that.
Awesome. I got a question for you that seems to be skipped by a lot of people. And that is there anything we can do to stabilize our educational system? It seems to have been taken over by the extreme left wing.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, when there's probably people on this phone that are like, you're the one taking over, right? I've seen this pointing game. You've seen it on the campuses. You could see when people assassinated Charlie Kirk. They think that we're the bad guys. And that's just having a designed conversation about the history of this nation and exchanging ideas. People fear that. Quite frankly, I think COVID is when most people became aware of the educational system, because all of a sudden our kids were being taught at home. And you're like, they're teaching you what? I remember my son, who was going to a very conservative Georgia school, sent me a picture of a slide in economics that said, one of the bullet points, and I read it right off the slide, said, capitalism is racist. To me, I'm like, capitalism is the most least racist thing I can imagine. It gives everybody the opportunity to achieve. As a matter of fact, I can't tell you how much Atlanta has benefited from opportunity zones, the minority community. Most of you realize that once again, I will not only taught at the HBCU and the AUC in Atlanta, at Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, and Spelman, but I was also a student body president at Morehouse School of Medicine. I have great compassion for minorities, but at the same time, I think what we taught in these schools is that we're not a meritocracy, that socialism somehow is all of a sudden going to be applied in a way it's never been applied before, and it's going to result in something better than it ever has in the past. Like Calvin Coolidge said 100 years ago, I'm going to repeat it again. The business of America is business. It allows all people to thrive. It pays the bills. It provides jobs. It provides so many jobs that you don't even have to have a minimum wage. Businesses are competing to employ you. You have upward mobility. You don't have to stay in one job. You can see who's offering me the most money to do what I can train myself for. It gives everybody the opportunity to advance, and education is a big part of the start of that. But hard work and entrepreneurship is what's driven America. But what we're teaching in our schools a lot of times is contrary to that. But I think we've awoken to the fact that that's happening. We're going after people who are anti-American and all the ideals that made us successful as a nation. I think there's been a great resurgence of factual debate and punishing schools who are grading people on dissent, which is absolutely un-American and absolutely against any sort of Socratic approach to education, where I'm not allowed to disagree honestly with my instructor. Once again, this is not a dictatorship. This is not a cult. This is an educational system. You should be able to question and use historical context to prove your point. And when people get into Marxist theology to prove a point rather than factual debate, we're punishing our kids, and we're actually setting ourselves up for failure into the future. I know there's a lot of people out there who disagree with me that are on this call, but let's have that debate. But let's have it without violence. Quite frankly, I think what's been suggested openly, and this is no king's rally, violence. Openly, not suggested, but just encouraged even. That's the wrong answer. You won't hear it from my lips. I don't subscribe to that. We are a great country based on exchange of ideas. It should always be a last resort, and I know some people say it is the last resort. No, it's not. That's not legitimate. You don't change people's hearts by punching them in the face. You have a good debate. You convince people that you care about them more than you care about being right, and we can have a great discussion after that.
Thank you for joining tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman McCormick. If you haven't spoken to a member of our team yet about subscribing to the newsletter, please stay on the line or go to our website at mccormick.house.gov and subscribe there, and I will pass it over to Congressman McCormick for any final words.
Hey, first of all, thanks everybody for taking time. It means you care. I appreciate you more than I can say. I appreciate my hardworking staff. Feel free to reach out to our office. We're very easy to get a hold of. We're on the internet. You can find our local office. We're actually not in our office this week because we found a lot of mold in our office, unfortunately, in our local office. We're about to move our headquarters as a result, and we'll fill you on that where that's going to be here shortly. We are there for you. We take great pride in being first in constituent services, to be ready there to make a difference legislatively. You will find we're never here to be argumentative. We understand there's going to be differences of opinion, and that's okay. That's healthy. That's American. I wish you nothing but blessings. I hope you know that we care about you no matter what your beliefs are, and look forward to continued dialogue into the future. I hope you have a blessed evening, and always remember that I believe in you and this great country a whole lot more than I believe in the government, and I will do everything I can to empower you to be successful.